Like special commission institutions and academies, our product technology has been upgraded, which helped boost the company business.
For the past 20 years, nearly 14,000 experts were sent to rural areas in Nanping, bringing advanced techniques and helping local businesses grow. All registered impoverished residents in the city had been lifted out of poverty by the end of 2017. The campaign has been voted nationwide by the central government to reduce poverty and boost rural revitalization. For the Beijing Hour, this is Gui Yan.
The development of hydroelectric power has brought massive economic benefits to people in China. It's also led to the resettlement of whole communities along certain waterways. Chen Ziyuan visited the resettled village of Manmi in Yunnan province and filed this report.
Hardship and tough living conditions along the Lantang River. This was how this community described their own riverside village before their resettlement.
The houses were old, no roads or electricity until 2005. When I got to the village, sometimes there was electricity, but only 4 hours a day.
They were resettled 16 years ago to make way for a huge project, the construction of the Jinghong hydropower station. It was a game changer for the villagers. The old village has been submerged by water. At this new location, Yuran says they live in better housing. The villagers can commute via road or waterway and have a source of income.
We collect the latex from the rubber trees from April until the end of November if the trees produce. However, the season wraps up a bit earlier this year. It no longer produces.
However, two challenges remain. One is the lack of business opportunities to earn a better living. The other is the state of the roads in and out of the village. The retired head of the village went through the resettlement project. He says it's been a positive experience for the most part, but problems still remain.
It's a tremendous change for our lives in the village, but there is one thing. Since we moved here in 2005, the coordination of the road never improved. We have a dirt road to communicate outside of the village.
Yan Peng was the village head for 20 years and said he did all he could to improve conditions in the village. He says a good road is crucial for its future, to help children to go to schools and encourage more people to visit. Maybe they could look at developing agricultural tourism.
We did not believe
agricultural tourism.
Seldom you would see a person wearing a helmet. So this is something that's really worthwhile for people to know. Right, and if they are living in Shanghai and still going on the road without wearing a helmet, riding their
Dan sends in this text, I think.
Say something bad. Oh, too long.
You are going to be fined, and this same regulation also stipulates that for those e-bike or e-scooter riders, when they want to charge their e-bikes, they need to go to specific venues, the designated venues.
Yep.
They cannot just charge the batteries of their e-bikes, say, on the corridor of their building.
No, that's definitely not.
This is strictly banned because a lot of the times there could be the very serious fire hazards due to the charging facilities, not capable of catering to
That's
this
not the
amount
problem,
of charging.
stupid. Wow.
Some of the e-bike
Women are allowed to
batteries.
speak in
And
China as long as they're
there
speaking
are such
stupid.
kind of violations, and then
Your e-bike's not going to set the building on fire. Your e-bike in the hallway means people can't get out through the hallway. It also interferes with the airflow. And the hallways are air ducts. All the hallways and stairwells are air ducts, elevator shafts too. There's nothing. Your
Happens and you
e-bike
call the
might
military
overload,
help,
yeah, and then it'll shut
and
the
you just
breaker
look
and
around
turn
the
off.
corner
That
and
won't
see
be
a
the problem.
100-foot tall giant robot
And if
camel
e-bikes were
coming.
catching fire
We're here
everywhere,
to
you'd
help.
have heard about it by now.
Ow! I think it'd be funny.
Vaporizers catch
I
fire,
think it'd be
e-bikes
cool.
don't.
But
Giant robot camel. See, I've never
pretty
thought
much
of
what
that
they
before.
are. Look
I
at
can
it.
never
It's a
watch the
robot
show
camel.
again. That was the coolest toy in the 80s, by the way. What are those things
Definitely.
called? Those robot
That
camels?
is a AT-AT, all-terrain attack transport.
So the big tall thing with the legs walking along, I mean, that was like the coolest toy to have. There was that in the Millennium Falcon. X-Wing Fighter was cool because the wings would pop open. But if you had that, because it was like basically like a
那就这里头呢，很多省级政府所干不了的事、做不了的事，
will be
在
possible
这
in
里
the future.
Hainan has long been known as China's Hawaii, bringing in tourists from all over the world. But thanks to this new draft law, before long, China's largest island will prove its trade potential.
That was He Weiwei reporting on the implications of legislation passed for Hainan Free Trade Port. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up, the U.S. has raised the cap on refugee admissions for the remainder of fiscal 2021. The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour brings you an hour of comprehensive news and...
On today's Arts Hour are documentary filmmaker Lucina Fisher and cultural commentator Kaleem Aftab. Kaleem, you have seen the film, and I'm quite jealous. So can you...
Stop me! Stop! There's a one, you hear me? Stop it, I say! Stop! There.
Daddy, I've been looking all over for you.
Who are these girls who just came in?
It's me, Daddy, Harriet. Oh, Mr. Michaels is waiting for you in your office.
Oh, thank you, Harriet. Just got up and... Oh, I can hardly stand. I'm so dizzy.
Maybe you want to spin around the other way for a while.
Well, let me help you, Mr. Conklin. I'll deal with you later, boy. Meanwhile, Miss Brooks, you go ahead and tell Mr. Michaels I'll be right there. I'll lean on Harriet and stretch until I feel a little stronger.
So you see, Mr. Michaels, I certainly wouldn't want my boy in a school run by someone who had to come to my firm for assistance.
I'm sure there must be some mistake, Mr. Chalmers. I've known Osgood Conklin for a good many years, and whatever else he may be, he's not a drinking man.
Good day, gentlemen. I'm Miss Brooks. Mr. Conklin will be here in a minute.
I'm Mr. Michaels, Miss Brooks, and this is Mr. Chalmers.
How do you do?
How do you do?
Tell me, Miss Brooks, how is Mr. Conklin feeling these days?
Feeling? Oh,
Yes.
just fine. He's never been better.
Good. You see, Mr. Chalmers, I'm sure that one look at Mr. Conklin will convince you that he's not the type of person who sends postcards to Cure That Habit Incorporated. Hello, Mr. Michael. Sorry I'm late. There you go.
Let me help you up, Mr. Conklin.
I must have tripped, Mr. Michaels. And who are these gentlemen with you?
These gentlemen are Mr. Chalmers. Shake hands with the one in the middle.
Pleasure to know you, Mr. Chalmers.
Don't look now, but that's Mr. Michaels. Here's Mr. Chalmers.
Oh, of course. Glad to shake your hand, Mr. Chalmers.
You're shaking his umbrella.
What seems to be the matter, Mr. Conklin? Having trouble with your vision?
Yes, that's it. I broke my glasses this morning. Well, I'll get over here and sit down at my desk.
Michaels, look at him stagger.
Incredible. Miss Brooks, you said Mr. Conklin never felt better.
That's right. You should have seen him an hour ago. Boy, what hiccups.
Hiccups?
Yes, I always get them when I'm startled.
And what, may I ask, startled you?
He opened his desk drawer this morning and saw a cat in it.
Tell me, Mr. Conklin, in which drawer did you see the cat? Well, the first cat I saw was in this drawer. In this drawer, Mr. Conklin? No, there's another cat in there. It was the one in here that startled me.
Would you mind showing us your cats, Mr. Conklin?
Not at all.
Damn it.
California has revealed tens of thousands of barrels on the seafloor, barrels which may contain industrial waste that's laced with DDT. Those barrels are being called ticking time bombs. DDT is a chemical compound that's been linked to cancer. Rachel Silverman has this report from San Francisco.
The expedition is the first of its kind to reveal the sheer scale of the industrial waste dumping that occurred for decades off the coast of California. The mission involved 31 scientists who mapped the steep sea floor between Catalina Island and Los Angeles. When they began interpreting sonar images gathered by 2 deep-sea robots, the scientists were stunned by the size of the dump site. Leading the team, Dr. Eric Terrell from the University of California at San Diego's Scripps Institution of Oceanography.
It really was a surprise to everybody who's worked with the data and who sailed at sea.
Terrell says they mapped 36,000 acres of the seafloor and uncovered more than 25,000 barrels, but they could have kept going in any direction and uncovered even more.
What we were beginning to observe on the seafloor, it was staggering, really.
Researchers say it's likely many of the barrels contain DDT waste. DDT is a highly toxic compound once used in abundance throughout the U.S., primarily as an agricultural pesticide. It was also sprayed at beaches and in buildings to kill mosquitoes and other pests. It was banned in the U.S. in 1972 based on its adverse environmental effects, as well as its potential human health risks. It's been linked to breast cancer and testicular cancer, Parkinson's disease, and Alzheimer's. It's not certain the barrels contain DDT. The recent expedition did not sample sediment around the barrels, but researchers say their location tracks with the process used by the Montrose Chemical Corporation, reported to have dumped DDT waste in the region for decades. The Southern California city of Torrance, north of Santa Catalina Island, was once the center of DDT production in the U.S. It was produced there in massive volumes after the Second World War. Again, Dr. Eric Terrell.
Looking at the historical records, how this had potentially occurred for decades on a monthly basis, it shouldn't have been a surprise to us, but it was still just not anything I had really wrapped my head around in terms of envisioning what we might actually find.
Montrose reportedly contracted to dispose of up to 2,000 barrels a month of acid sludge waste containing DDT by dumping it in the waters off the California coast. Workers are said to have sometimes used an axe on the barrels, opening them up so they would fall to the seafloor faster, likely causing them to leak chemicals as they sank. Scripps Institution of Oceanography's Dr. Eric Terrell says the next step is to do chemical analysis of the barrels and the sediment around them.
Our contribution to that piece of the puzzle was really to start providing a large wide area map to say where should we begin sampling, because it's very costly to go to sea.
Next steps after that will be developing a strategy for how to respond to what potentially might be there. If the barrels do contain DDT, experts say it may have already entered the food chain. For the Beijing Hour, I'm Rachel Silverman in San Francisco.
The Democratic Republic of the Congo on Monday officially declared the end of its 12th Ebola outbreak. Chris Okamingra has more.
The DRC's Health Minister, Jean-Jacques Mbungani, issued a statement declaring the end of the country's 12th Ebola outbreak. The disease was contained in less than 3 months after the first case was reported in the eastern city of Butembo. The World Health Organization praised the country's health officials for their swift response in tackling the disease, but they have called for vigilance and the maintenance of strong surveillance systems to avoid a resurgence. 12 people contracted Ebola and 6 of them lost their lives in the latest outbreak. Officials say the disease was contained using a vaccine that was administered to more than 1,600 people. The DRC's worst Ebola outbreak occurred in 2018 in the east of the country. It claimed more than 2,200 lives. Ebola is a contagious virus that scientists say is transmitted to humans from wild animals and spreads within the population through human-to-human transmission.
That was Chris.
But they don't know
reporting
which
from the
animal.
Democratic
They've never
Republic of
proven
Congo.
that. They don't know
German
what the
prosecutors have
reservoir
announced
animal
they've
is.
busted one of the world's biggest international darknet platforms for child pornography. 3 alleged administrators of the Boys Town platform and another suspect, all German citizens, were arrested in mid-April. Interior Ministry spokesman Dr. Markus Lammert says it was one of the biggest investigative successes in this field of crime.
Those arrested are primarily administrators of this platform and one so-called super user, that is to say, someone who has fueled the spread by uploading a particularly large number of images.
The darknet platform had been operational since at least June of 2019. It's time for a short break. So far this hour, data shows that China's foreign trade numbers are healthy with the COVID situation in the country under control. Scientists and researchers have been fostering talent and improving education in rural parts of Fujian province. The last direct flight from India to the U.S. has landed in Chicago as new COVID-19 travel restrictions take effect. And Shane Bigham with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
Join the most popular Chinese language learning page on Facebook by searching for CRI Learn Chinese. It's a quick yet fun way.
Listen to tonight's cast with Jane Morgan, Dick Crenna, Gloria McMillan.
Later, and parents are scrolling through emails or Facebook messages or whatever it be. But the digital consent piece came up because in schools, kids aren't allowed to document other people, and within that, there's almost a student code of conduct in the sense that you won't document your peers, you won't be filming your teacher. And as a guest in schools, like I've been to a lot of schools, I know that as a guest in the building, I'm not allowed to film or videotape any child without their consent, which is, to be fair, pretty easy to get, or the school's consent or any parent guardian consent. I have these tiers. And in that, you'd also have these high school principals or middle school principals who would say, every holiday event we have, we tell the parents, no phones, don't film. And then you look over and there's one holding up their iPad, filming the children singing a holiday carol or whatever it be. So digital consent evolved as a...
Music from Dua Lipa, all that coming up on the Arts Hour.
BBC News, I'm John Shea. Rescue workers in Mexico City are combing through the wreckage of metro carriages after a railway overpass collapsed onto a busy road. At least 20 people have died, including some children, and almost 50 have been taken to hospital. Foreign ministers from the G7 group of industrialized nations will meet in London today for their...
Bringing you suspense.
Two suspenses and one. Is this the second part? It better be the second fucking part, man. So at the end of this video, a thing will fly by and you can find previous video.
Suspense.
I'm going to try to shut up.
Columbia's Play Theater of outstanding thrillers. Produced and directed by William Spear and scored by Bernard Herrmann. The notable melodramas from fiction and stage and screen. From the world's great entertaining excitement. What you thought? We know how to play shit. You and your brother with the same clip. Suspense. Tonight's adventure in suspense is from the pen of Dorothy Sayers. She called it The Cave of Ali Baba. Like the tale told by Scheherazade, a distinguished ancestress in the storytelling art, Miss Sayers' thriller deals with 40 thieves and with two magic words. For your uneasy listening, then, Suspense presents The Cave of Ali Baba.
This is my favorite Popeye episode, too.
On a Saturday afternoon in January, in a grim and narrow house in Lambeth, a man sat eating kippers and reading the daily paper. He was smallish and spare, with brown hair rather too regularly waved and a strong, brown, pointed beard. His double-breasted navy blue suit, his socks, tie, and handkerchief were all scrupulously matched, and his brown boots just a trifle too highly polished. He did not look a gentleman, not even a gentleman's gentleman. Yet there was something about his appearance which suggested that he was accustomed to the manner of life in good families. A superior butler, perhaps, yet not old enough to be retired. A footman who had come into a legacy, yes. He had just finished eating, and he was sipping his coffee when a slight noise at the front door caught his ear. Swiftly, too swiftly for a quiet little man sitting eating kippers and reading his paper on a Saturday afternoon, he sprang up, he dashed through the small hallway, and he flung the door open. Of course, no one in sight. The society is at least dramatic in its delivery of its correspondence. And as if he knew what he would find, he shut the door and turned to the hat stand in the hall. An envelope had been placed there. It was addressed to Joseph Rogers. So Mr. Rogers opened the note. Number 21. An extraordinary general meeting will be held tonight at the house of number 1 at 11:30. You will be absent at your peril. The word is finality. Finality. Yes, I think so. The man called Joseph Rogers stood for a moment, studying the note. Then he strode to the rear of the house to a tall safe built in the wall. Carefully, he manipulated a dial. He swung the safe door open, stepped inside into a small strong room. He opened a drawer marked correspondence, placed the note inside, and then came out again. A moment to reset the lock for a new combination, and then he went back into the living room. He reached for the telephone, he lifted it from the cradle, and then reconsidered. Too dangerous. He hurried upstairs and clambered into an attic. In the furthest corner, he searched for and found a knothole in the woodwork. He pressed it. A concealed trapdoor swung open, and he was in the loft of the adjoining house. He paused before 3 cages, in each of them a carrier pigeon. Carefully, he wrote a note. He slipped it under a pigeon's wing. There you are, my pretty. There, take it easy now. There you go. Lie straight. 4:30. I'll send another pigeon at 5 and the third at 6. I should have my answer by 9:30 at the latest. Oh, I forgot one thing, most important. Mr. Rogers moved through the trapdoor, back into the attic of his own house, and once again he stood before the tall safe built in the wall. He opened the door, stepped into the strong room, moved for a moment quietly in the dark, and then spoke gently. Now, be good, my sweetheart. I'm depending on you. Open sesame. Come on now, old thing. Open sesame. Open sesame. That's better. That's very much better. By 9:30, his answer was back. All the little piece of paper said was a hasty okay. At a quarter before 11, he took his revolver from a locked drawer, inspected it carefully. Yes, loaded it with cartridges from an unbroken packet, and left the house. He walked quickly, keeping well away from the wall, and when he climbed on a bus, he sat next to the conductor, where he could watch all who got on and off. By 25 minutes after 11, he was out on lonely Hampstead Heath, pausing in the shadow of a large tree to adjust a black velvet mask on which in white thread was stitched the number 21. Then he stepped briskly to the door of the villa that lay before him and...
What is it?
Finality.
Come in. Go right on through. Number 1 will check you in.
Right. "21, sir."
Lift your mask. Very well, 21. You may go on to the meeting room.
Thank you, sir. The room of the villa in which Mr. Rogers now stood was a large one, a brilliantly lighted room. There was a gramophone in one corner, blaring out a jazz tune. To its rhythm, couples, masked men and women, were dancing. Some were in evening dress, some in tweeds and jumpers. In another corner of the room was the bar.
Mr. Rogers went up to it and asked the masked man in charge for a double whiskey. He consumed it slowly, leaning on the bar. The room filled. Presently, someone moved across to the gramophone and stopped it. Mr. Rogers looked around. Number 1, the massive gentleman in evening dress who had checked him in, appeared on the threshold. A tall woman in black stood beside him. Her mask, embroidered with a white number 2, covered her hair and her face completely. Only her fine bearing, her white arms, and her dark eyes, shining through the eye slits, proclaimed her as a woman of power, of physical attraction. The masked dancers were silent now, as number 1 spoke.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are short 2 members tonight. I need not inform you of the disastrous failure of our plan for obtaining the plans of the Court Windlesham Heliscoper. Our courageous and devoted friends, number 15 and number 38, were betrayed and taken by the police. Some of you might fear that under examination these 2 would break down and give away our society. There is no need for such a fear. I gave the usual orders, and their tongues have been silenced. Their defense will be discreetly compensated in the usual manner. I call upon number 12 and 34 to undertake this agreeable task. They will attend me at my office for their instructions after the meeting. Will the numbers I have named kindly signify by raising their hands that they are able and willing to perform this duty? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your partners for the next dance.
The gramophone struck up again. Mr. Rogers turned to a girl near him in a red dress. She nodded, and they slipped into the movement of a foxtrot. The couple gyrated solemnly and in silence. Their shadows were flung against the blinds as they turned and stepped to and fro. The girl in red spoke to Mr. Rogers.
What's happened? I'm frightened, don't you? Feels as something awful was about to happen.
It does take one a bit short. Number 1's way of doing things, but it's safer like that.
Oh, those poor men.
Don't talk in praise, you know the rules. Sorry.
In silence, the dance continued. And then it came to an end. And then when it had finished, the dancers came again to where number 1 sat and waited with tense eagerness for him to speak.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may wonder why this extraordinary meeting has been called. The reason is a serious one. The failure of our recent attempt was no accident. The police were not on the premises that night by accident. We have a traitor amongst us. This last failure was not the first. You will remember the unfortunate way in which the affair of the Dinglewood pearls turned out, and there were others. However, I am happy to say that our minds can now be easy. All these troubles have been traced to their origin. The offender has been discovered and will be removed. The misguided member who introduced the traitor to our ranks will be placed in a position where his lack of caution will have no further ill effects. There is no cause for alarm. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your partners for the next dance.
Again, the gramophone took up its bizarre monotony. The masked dancers glided and turned, and their movements were sharper, more staccato. The girl in red was claimed by a tall mask in evening dress. A hand laid on Mr. Rogers' arm made him stop. A small, plump woman in a green jumper slipped a cold hand into his. The dance went on. When it stopped, everyone stood, detached, stiffened in expectation. The endless interval was over. Number 1 raised his voice.
Ladies and gentlemen, you will no doubt wish to be relieved of the questions on your mind. I will name the persons involved. Number 37. No! Silence! I swear on everyone! Silence! You have failed in discretion. You will be dealt with. If you have anything to say in defense of your folly, I'll hear it later. Sit down.
Number 37 sank down upon a chair. He pushed his handkerchief under the mask to wipe his face. 2 tall men closed in upon him. The rest fell back.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will now name the traitor. Stand forward. Number 21. Take off your mask. Number 37. This man was introduced to our society by you under the name of Joseph Rogers, formerly second footman in the service of the Duke of Denver, dismissed for petty thievery. Did you take steps to verify the statement?
I did. As God's my witness. It was all straight. I had him identified by 2 of the servants. I asked all over about him. The story was true. I'll swear it was.
Number 21. Your name has been given as Joseph Rogers. Is that your real name? Answer me. Is that your real name?
No.
What is your name?
Peter Death Redden Whimsy.
Silence! My compliments, your lordship. We thought Lord Whimsy was dead. He was killed, so the paper said 2 winters ago, while shooting big game in Africa. He even left a will, proved the £500,000.
To his mother, I believe, the Dowager Duchess of Denver.
Lord Peter Whimsy, indeed. Well-known book collector, man about town, distinguished criminologist. Took an active part in the solution of several famous mysteries.
Taking an active part, if you don't mind.
So you deliberately led us to think you were dead and became Joseph Rogers to gain entrance to our society.
Yeah.
What has become of the real Joseph Rogers?
He died abroad. I took his place.
And the end of your impersonation to uncover our society.
Precisely.
I see. The robbery of your own fete, upon which we congratulated ourselves, and which you helped to execute, was arranged.
Obviously.
The robbery of the Duchess, your mother, was arranged by you.
It was. It was a very ugly tiara, no real loss to anybody with decent taste.
The burglary of the Winthrop mansion, the theft of the necklace at Covent Garden, the others as well. You arranged them all.
All. May I smoke, by the way?
You may not. Numbers 15, 22, 39. You have watched the prisoner. Has he made any attempt to communicate with anybody?
None. His letters and parcels have been opened. His telephone tapped and his movements followed. Even the water pipes in his house have been under observation for Morse code signals.
You're certain?
Absolutely.
Then we may be sure that he has been alone in this adventure. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please take your... Very well. Take the prisoner away. And be sure you explain carefully to him first the manner of his death. I'm sure he'll enjoy it.
Wait, at least you can let me die decently.
Take him away.
Stop, I have something to say, something to sell.
We make no bargains with traitors.
No, but listen. Do you think I haven't thought of this? I'm not a fool. I've left a letter. To the police. If I don't return tomorrow, it'll be opened.
It's a bluff. The prisoner sent no letter. He's been strictly watched for months.
I left the letter before I came to Lambeth.
Then it can't contain no information of any value.
Oh, but it does. The combination of my safe.
Indeed? Has this man's safe been searched?
Yes.
What did it contain?
No information of importance, sir. An outline of our organization, the name of the house, nothing that can't be ordered and covered before morning. And did you investigate the inner compartment of the safe?
Did you hear what he says, did you? He's trying to bluff. There is no inner compartment.
I hate to contradict you, but I'm really afraid you must have overlooked it.
And what did you say was in the compartment, if it does exist?
The names of every member of this society with their addresses, photographs, and fingerprints.
What did you say you have contrived to get this information?
By doing a little detective work on my own.
But you've been watched.
True, the fingerprints of my watches adorn the first page of the collection.
That statement can be proved?
Certainly. The name of number 40, for example.
Stop! If you mention names here, you will certainly have no hope of mercy. Bring the prisoner to my office. Ladies and gentlemen, take your partners for the next dance.
Yes. Well, I gotta go on. I've proved that I know your gang from number 1 through number 25. Do you want me to prove that I know the others as well?
My lord, your story fills me with regret that you are not in fact a member of our society. Wit, courage, and industry are valuable in an association like ours. I fear I cannot persuade you. No, I suppose not. Yes? Ask the members kindly to proceed to the supper room. Ladies and gentlemen, conceal from you the seriousness of the situation. The prisoner has recited to me 25 names and addresses which were thought to be unknown except to their owners and to me. There has been great carelessness. Fingerprints have been obtained. He showed me some photographs of them. He tells me that the book of names and addresses is to be found in the inner compartment of his safe, together with certain letters and papers stolen from the houses of members, and several objects with fingerprints. I believe he tells the truth. He offers the combination of the safe in exchange for a quick death. I think his offer should be accepted. What is your opinion, ladies and gentlemen?
The combination is known already. Fool!
This man is Lord Peter Wimsey, a scientist of crime. Do you think he will have forgotten to change the combination?
Oh, I say give him the time. The time's getting short.
You agreed? It's a bargain, Wimsey. What is the combination?
The word of the combination is unreliability.
And the inner door, the inner compartment.
In anticipation of the visit of the police, the inner door is open.
Good. Number 12 and 36. You will go to the prisoner's house and... Why should it involve everything?
That's right.
I agree. Nobody ought to be trusted.
Then what, ladies and gentlemen, do you suggest?
You go yourself. You're the only one that knows all the names. You go yourself.
I second that motion. Is the wish of the meeting, then, that I should go?
No. I say no. No, don't go. Number one is our president, the head and soul of our society. If anything should happen to him, where should we be? You've all blundered. We have your carelessness to thank for all this. Do you think we should be safe for 5 minutes if he were not here to repair your folly?
Well, there's something in that. If you will pardon my suggesting it, the lady appears to be in a position peculiarly favorable for the reception of the president's confidences. The contents of my modest volume will be no news to her. Why should she not go herself?
Because I say she must not. If it is the will of the meeting, I'll go. Give me the key of the house. Here. Is your house watched?
No.
If I have not returned in 2 hours, act for the best to save yourselves. And do what you like with the prisoner.
The president has been gone 2 hours. Traitor! What happened to him?
How should I know? Perhaps he's looked after himself and gone while the going was good.
Liar! Oh. He'd never do that. What have you done with him? Speak, or I'll make you speak.
I can only form a guess, madam. I'm afraid that your president may quite inadvertently have left the door of the inner compartment closed behind him, in which case...
Yes?
Well, let me explain the mechanism of my safe. The inner compartment has 2 doors. The outermost opens outward with an ordinary key.
Oh, do you think that the president is so stupid as to be caught in an obvious trap? Undoubtedly, he will have wedged open that inner door.
Undoubtedly, madam. But the sole purpose of that inner door is to appear to be the only one. Hidden behind the hinge of that door is another, sliding panel, also left open. Inside the compartment is the big, heavy ledger containing all the information about this society. This ledger lies on a steel shelf. Do I make myself clear?
Oh, yes, go on.
The steel shelf is balanced on a concealed spring. When the weight of the book, the ledger, is lifted, the shelf rises almost imperceptibly, and in rising it makes an electrical contact. Now, let me draw a picture. Your president steps into the inner compartment, sees the book, takes it up, anxiously to examine to see if it's the right one. The shelf rises, the electrical contact is made, and the steel panel behind him slides into place. He's trapped.
You devil! What is the word that opens the inner door? Quick, the word.
Do you remember the story of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves? Well, when I had this safe constructed, my mind went back, well, call me sentimental if you will, to my childhood. The words that open the door are open sesame.
How long can a man live in this devil's trap of yours?
Oh, I should think he might hold out for a few hours if he didn't use up all the oxygen by hammering and yelling. I imagine if we go there at once, we'd be able to get him out all right.
I'll go myself.
I think you'd better take me with you.
Why?
Well, I'm the only person who can open the door.
But you've given me the word.
Yes, you have the word. But this door of mine, I'm rather proud of it. You know, it's my own invention. It's the latest thing. It will open to the words open sesame, all right. But to my voice only.
Your voice? I'll chop your voice with my hands. What do you mean, your voice only?
Don't touch my throat like that. You'll wreck my voice, and then the door might not recognize it. That's
better. The door got stuck for a week once, and when I had a cold.
Is what he says true? Is it possible?
Perfectly possible, madam. It'll have a microphone arrangement. Could be done also with light vibration.
We must let him go. Take the ropes off him.
Let him go, nothing. He doesn't go to blab to the police. The president's done in, that's all. And we'd all better make traps while we can. It's all up, boys. Right. Chuck this fella down the cellar and fasten him in. I'll go and destroy the ledgers. 32, you know where the switch is. Give us a quarter of an hour to clear, then you can blow the place to glory.
No. No, you can't leave one to die. He's your president, your leader. I won't let it happen. I won't. I'll free this man myself.
Yeah, none of that.
No, let me go. Let go of me.
Think, Doctor, think. It's been light in an hour or two. The police may be here at any moment.
Police? Oh, yes. Yes, you're right. No, we mustn't imperil the safety of all for just one man. He himself would not wish it. Throw this man in the cellar and let's get out of here while there's time.
Here. This is good enough. Leave him here. Right. Now let's go.
Hey, you chaps.
Yeah, should have gagged him.
I say, it's lonesome down here in this cellar. You might at least leave the light on.
Don't worry about the dark. They're taking you here as a time fuse for the bomb that's going to blow up this place. It's all set. You won't have long to wait.
Not long.
Who is it? Who's there?
Hold still, so I can cut the ropes.
Well, if it isn't two.
My compliments, madam, on your loyalty to your president.
Quick, quick. They've set the time fuse. The house is mine. Follow me as fast as you can. Number one must be saved. And only you can do it.
Well, how did you manage to?
There's no time for questions. Get up and follow me. You will release him. You promise.
I promise. But I warn you, madam, that this house is surrounded. When my safe door closed, it gave a signal to Scotland Yard. All the members of the society are thick.
Never mind them. Here, outside. Quick.
All right, who's there?
Is that you, Inspector? Get your fellows away, quick. The house is going up in a minute.
It's Inspector Parker, old man. Are you all right?
I'm a bit winded. What happened, Inspector?
Well, about half a dozen of them got blown up. The rest we bagged.
Hurry, we must hurry.
Who's this?
One of the gang. She's called number 2.
We must save him, we must.
Golly, I clean forgot the gentleman in the safe. Parker, where's your car?
It's down the lane.
Send one of your men down to get it.
Right. Johnson, bring that car here.
Yes, sir. I've got the number 1 of the whole company quietly asphyxiating his home. I promised we'd get back and save him. He's the bloke that we've been wanting. The man at the back of the Morrison case and the Hope Wilmington case and hundreds of others.
This is it? Quite a contraption.
Yes, I only hope he hasn't upset the adjustment by something like it.
Oh, please.
I hope you haven't hurt my voice.
Oh, you sound all right.
I can only be conversational. Come on, old thing. Show us your faces. Open sesame. Open sesame. Confound you. Open sesame. Open sesame. Let me see. No, he's not. He lived to stand his trial.
And so, all's right with the world, as it always is when Lord Peter Wimsey is involved. The Cave of Ali Baba by Dorothy Sayers was the story which gave us tonight's Suspense. Suspense is produced by William Spear. Our guest director for this evening was Robert Louis Sheehan. Tonight's radio drama was written by Peter Lyon and scored by Bernard Herrmann. Rodney Brent was Peter Wimsey, William Moulton played number 1, and Ira Gerald, the lady in the case. Others in the cast were Kathleen Cordell, Victor Beecroft, Roland Bottomley, J.W. Austin, William Podmore, Ian Martin, and William Moulton. Next Wednesday, suspense will not be heard because of a special all-star Hollywood broadcast which Paramount Pictures will present. 2 weeks from tonight, at this time, Columbia will bring you another selected story from the world's great literature of thrills. Another study in suspense.
This is Barry Kroger, and this is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
You're listening to Chin Radio AM 1540, the voice of multicultural Toronto, bringing you the latest updates on COVID-19. Stay informed, stay safe, and stay tuned to Chin Radio AM 1540.
Now, as gunshots echo across the wind-swept, snow-covered reaches of the wild Northwest, Quaker pop wheat and
hard. Some people are still, which split in two parts. At least 75 more people are reportedly hurt. Dozens of rescuers are now combing through the wreckage looking for survivors. Back in our country, Canadians have repeatedly been told to get the first COVID-19 vaccine that's available to them. But could that advice be changing? Global's Brianna Carnegie reports.
Canada's organization is recommending vaccine to adults 30 years and older. It's similar to advice issued last month for the Oxford AstraZeneca shot. But now there's a notable cap.
We don't care. Jesus Christ.
The journalist in Mexico City knows the area where the accident happened.
This is an area called Tláhuac on the outskirts of Mexico City, a relatively poor area where a lot of people would still at that time be coming back from work. The hospitals around there are still recovering from a lot of the COVID pandemic. But also there's controversy about the line itself. It was made under then Mayor Marcelo Ebrard, who's now the Foreign Secretary and is seen as a contender for the President of Mexico. So there's a lot of people criticizing the line being made then. Also, after the earthquake of 2017, images have come out of some of the columns very damaged then. So there's concern they weren't repaired properly.
The foreign ministers from the G7 group of industrialized nations are starting direct talks in London, their first for 2 years. Our diplomatic correspondent, James Landale, looks at what the ministers are likely to be discussing.
Basically, all the big geopolitical issues of the day. So Russia, China, Myanmar, Ukraine, Ethiopia, the Sahel, Syria. It's not just the G7, it's also some guests, the foreign ministers from India, South Africa, South Korea. The EU foreign policy chief is going to be there. The foreign minister of Brunei is there because they are currently in charge of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So all of them talking together, saying what can they better do to defend open societies against the threat of more authoritarian nations.
Fuck off and kill yourself.
The official number of coronavirus cases in India has now topped 20 million. There's been no let-up in the rate of infections, with more than 300,000 positive tests recorded for a 13th day in a row. In the capital, Delhi, there are still reports of oxygen shortages. Davina Gupta is there.
This morning, we've seen over 500 oxygen concentrators from the US, around 400 oxygen cylinders from the UK as well. But the distribution and management of these resources is a big challenge. And that's why yesterday, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has pressed the army into service, calling them to boost the current medical setup. And medical students are also pulled out from their colleges, and have been asked to help hospitals in this time of need.
The Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea has launched a nationwide coronavirus vaccination campaign in an effort to staunch a runaway outbreak of the disease. James Marape said the first 100,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine had arrived in Papua New Guinea. He's urged the public and skeptical health workers to get vaccinated. The World Health Organization says more than 11,000 cases of the virus and 115 deaths have been recorded since February. World news from the BBC. The trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, who's accused of trafficking teenage girls for the financier Jeffrey
Caulfield with his second OT winner in his 5th career game.
Because new charges were added to the case last month, as Maxwell denies all the allegations against her and has pleaded not guilty. Britain and India have agreed new trade and investment deals worth more than $1.3 billion. These are expected to create more than 6,000 jobs in the UK, mainly in the technology and health sectors. Our global trade correspondent is Dashini David.
The government hopes that closer ties with one of the most populous and fastest growing major economies could have huge long-term potential, especially as tensions with China mount. It believes that this announcement, which boosts access to India for producers of British fruit and medical devices and includes investment in the UK by Indian vaccine manufacturers, is just a taste of what could be achieved. But economists warn that getting a full deal with Delhi that lowers more trade barriers won't be easy.
Poland is easing its pandemic restrictions from today as its third coronavirus wave continues to lose momentum. Shopping centres and museums are reopening, and primary school classes are resuming across the nation, although the number of pupils will be restricted. The government plans to ease other restrictions gradually throughout May if the infection rate continues to fall. People in and around Spain's capital, Madrid, are voting in a regional election that's dominated by the response to the pandemic. The Conservative People's Party has governed the area for the last 26 years, and opinion polls indicate its local leader, Isabel Díaz Ayuso, is likely to win again. But the opposition says Madrid has had one of the highest infection rates in Spain. And that's the latest BBC World News.
Right. Just setting up this acoustic recorder.
In a rainforest, a team of scientists strapped a small recording device to the trunk of a tree.
They've just got an SD card that we record all the data.
I simply dream that in a very near future, every renter like me can breathe freely in their place.
The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour brings you an hour of comprehensive news and information from both China and the rest of the world. A mix of news, sport. Your very own window to China and the rest of the world.
Today, provide you with in-depth news and expert analysis. Telling the full story. You need the news you want to know.
In the first. Here's the investigation from Global News.
It was September. The country was dipping its toe in a pool of normalcy. After a brutal first wave that claimed 9,000 lives, the majority in long-term care homes when it hit.
Ontario is now in the second wave of COVID-19.
We are in our second wave. This surge is a very different surge. It wasn't long before COVID's grip followed a devastating and predictable pattern.
A long-term care home in Barrie, Oakwood Park Lodge.
At least 111 residents.
It was hopeless. They were sitting ducks. They couldn't leave.
Ontario promised it would use all resources available to protect its seniors.
Doing absolutely everything possible to put an iron ring around the long-term care.
And the iron ring never existed. The iron ring was a farce.
Nearly 2,000 long-term care home residents in Ontario died in the second wave.
What we saw was something I really did not think was possible, which was to eclipse that wave 1 death toll.
Did we do enough before the second wave hit to ready ourselves?
No, obviously not. There was a long period of time there between the first wave and the second wave, 6 months, where the cavalry should have been called in, but those activities really only started later into the fall.
One of the most crucial programs in the face of an outbreak is called Infection Prevention and Control, or IPAC, in medical circles. Dr. Kevin Katz runs the program at North York General Hospital, one of the many hospitals called in to support long-term care homes starting in the first wave. What sort of issues with IPAC were you encountering?
It's quite common to see staff wearing extra PPE, 2 masks, 3 masks, 2 gloves, 2 pairs of gloves, 2 gowns, 3 gowns.
A picture taken inside a Toronto area home during the first wave says it all. A personal support worker wearing a garbage bag over their head.
What they didn't realize is that by putting on multiple pieces of extra PPE and then leaving it on for an entire shift and going and seeing multiple residents, that actually they were contributing to transmitting it up and down the hallway.
Of course they were.
Throughout the pandemic, some homes were using household cleaners to fend off a deadly virus, others not cleaning frequently enough. Should they have known this?
They should have known this.
While hospitals saw significant investment in infection prevention and control programs after the SARS outbreak of 2003, long-term care homes did not. And so, in the face of a pandemic, basic knowledge was lacking.
I think that's a fair statement. Long-term cares weren't ready for COVID.
Provincial health officials knew there was a problem. Internal documents with insights from the first wave said homes were significantly under-resourced to meet IPAC standards to protect basic needs of residents. So Katz and a team of IPAC leaders from hospitals across Toronto went to the government with a proposed solution. Hospitals would tap into their existing expertise, hire new staff, and lead IPAC programs in long-term care homes. But months went by without any response.
Things did not happen quickly.
Do you have any idea why?
I don't.
At the same time, Donna Duncan with the Ontario Long-Term Care Association was also sounding the alarm. You put a call out to the Ontario government for, quote, an army of infection prevention and control specialists. Did the army come?
Well, one army came.
But they weren't infection prevention and control specialists.
No, we didn't get the army that we called for.
It wasn't until November, well into the second wave, that long-term care homes were given the details of the government's plan for infection control. Hospitals would support homes with 2/3 of the requested funding, but homes were still responsible for running their own program.
We needed help, and we still need help.
Without proper IPAC training, outbreaks became monstrous. Fearful workers were leaving and falling ill. Staffing levels were crumbling. In Quebec, the government acted swiftly between waves, launching a program in June that fast-tracked the training of nearly 8,000 workers to serve in an assisting role. Ontario was also discussing staffing after the first wave. Internal documents acknowledged the system needs thousands of PSWs, and there was a suggestion to look at the Quebec model. But a patchwork of hiring programs in the fall failed to produce substantial results.
What we didn't do was take the big steps forward, like Quebec did, to do mass hiring and training over the summer to meet the needs in the fall.
Laura Tamblin-Watts is the president of CanAge, a seniors advocacy organization. Without adequate staff, she says, some homes couldn't provide basic care.
I remember a conversation with a woman who was left in a hallway. She was put in a chair that had a restraint over it. It looked like a tray, but it meant she couldn't get up. And she was left there for most of the day without food and without water.
It wasn't until the second wave was ending that the Ontario government announced free tuition and accelerated training for 6,000 new personal support workers.
That's where you got these
Dr. Nathan Stahl is a geriatrician with Sinai Health in Toronto.
If you want to talk about high-yield things that could have been done, it would have been to secure staffing, it would have been to shore up infection prevention and control, and it would have been to decrowd homes. And we failed to act meaningfully on either of those three issues.
Crowded homes weren't created by this pandemic, but they are the perfect place for spreading a virus. And there are nearly 11,000 people living in 3 and 4 bed rooms in Ontario. Successive provincial governments vowed to get rid of them and build tens of thousands of new beds, but never came close.
Our homes crashed because of decades of neglect. None of us held our politicians accountable for making the changes in the sector that we needed.
Dr. Bob Bell is the former Deputy Minister of Health and Long-Term Care under the Wynne government.
We didn't have the money behind the commitment that politicians and bureaucrats had made. The money just wasn't there.
But surely they knew how much it was going to cost.
Well, yes.
I mean, no politician makes a promise without having a back of the paper napkin assessment of cost. In the face of crowded rooms and a highly contagious virus, some parts of the province got creative. In Windsor, the hospital opened 100 beds inside the local college's sportsplex. In Toronto, the Salvation Army teamed up with the province to create 90 beds inside a convention centre. But these were the exceptions. Most residents had nowhere to go.
Our premier in Ontario talked about moving heaven and earth to protect long-term care residents. There were expensive, complex innovations that could have been done to protect residents.
Mechanical ventilation.
In its recent spring budget, the Ford government reaffirmed its commitment to create 30,000 beds over the next decade and says it's 60% there. It also struck a committee to examine the recovery of the sector, including effective IPAC practices, emergency staffing, and decrowding homes. But by then, the second wave was over.
At each opportunity over the course of the pandemic, when it came to long-term care home residents, we really never missed an opportunity to let them down.
We never missed an opportunity to let them down.
Yeah, we never missed an opportunity. Why was the sector so neglected, and why did nobody act on what was learned in the first wave to prevent it from happening in the second wave?
That's an amazing research report, globalnews.ca. The link is there for you to check it out. Look under the tab Investigations. In Ontario, that's what happened. This model all across Canada needs to be fixed. There's no denying that. I mean, this, as was so eloquently pointed out here on the shift, via the shift heads, this is our future. This is our future. So it's up to us if we're going to do anything about it. Here are the stories of the day for Tuesday. May the 4th be with you. And our Good Morning headlines.
Here's your all-night headlines.
I'm Shane Hewitt. The National Advisory Council on Immunization, NACI, is now recommending Johnson & Johnson's COVID vaccine for Canadians over 30. Yet the group also says they might want to wait for an mRNA from Pfizer and Moderna instead. Confusing, right? David Aiken reports the mixed messages are causing people to have no idea what to do.
Vaccination is essential to end the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, but which vaccine to get? Politicians and most public health officials have been saying the best vaccine to get is the one you're offered first. But the doctors on the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, known as NACI, well, they have a different message.
What we've said all along is that the mRNA vaccines are the preferred vaccine.
The mRNA vaccines are Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna, not AstraZeneca or Johnson & Johnson.
Well, individuals need to have an informed choice to be vaccinated with the first vaccine that's available or to wait for an mRNA vaccine.
But the implicit message from NACI to delay getting one vaccine in favor of another is the last thing frontline emergency room doctors want to hear.
It's very frustrating to hear that recommendation. The recommendation should be, and has always been, by physicians on the ground to take the first vaccine available to you as soon as possible.
Or public health officials battling the pandemic.
The bottom line is, take whatever vaccine you're offered.
But for now, the first Johnson & Johnson vaccines, the first single-dose vaccines approved for use in Canada, are held up. A first shipment of 300,000 doses arrived last week, but Health Canada held them back over concerns that an ingredient may have been contaminated during their manufacture at a plant in Baltimore, Maryland.
It's certainly it's sort of being held in freezers in good condition, and until obviously Health Canada does its due diligence. And I can't give a timeline. I would leave that to Health Canada.
And so it may be Pfizer-BioNTech to the rescue. 2 million doses of that vaccine are arriving in Canada this week and every week during the month of May. David Aiken, Global News, Ottawa.
Herd immunity has been a phrase that's been around since the very beginning. All we got to do is get enough people sick, we'll have herd immunity. All we got to do is get enough vaccinations, we'll have herd immunity. Well, concerns are still rising down the U.S. that they're not going to be able to reach herd immunity as vaccination efforts against COVID-19 are slowing down. Now, their numbers are way better than Canada's numbers when it comes to absolutely everything. Vaccinations, reopening, all of that stuff. Daily case count. Does Canada have a shot for herd immunity? Eric Sorensen explains why a growing number of epidemiologists believe herd immunity is unattainable.
More than half of American adults have received at least one vaccine dose, but the vaccination rate is falling.
I do not plan on getting it unless I am forced.
Vaccine hesitancy has slowed demand, even as COVID variants require a higher percentage to be vaccinated. And many experts now believe the U.S. will not reach herd immunity.
And now that we really understand the role that these variants are playing and how much the variants
you're getting vaccinated against the virus you already got, not the new
herd immunity has become elusive.
Herd immunity was the ultimate goal, to vaccinate our way entirely out of the pandemic. Canadian authorities say it's too early to know what level of immunity is possible here. The emphasis is shifting to reducing the number and severity of cases.
We could manage this through vaccination such that this is something that affects people at worst like a cold and limits severe illness.
Canadians are among the most willing vaccine recipients in the world. 2 months ago, an Ipsos survey asked whether people agreed if a vaccine for COVID-19 were available to me, I would get it. In Canada, 79% agreed, a number that has risen more than 20 points since December. In the U.S., only 65% agreed they would get a vaccine if available.
If we can get 90% or 95% vaccination, we will be in a hugely stronger position to go back to normal life without seeing deaths and hospitalizations.
In the U.S., big crowds without masks are being allowed. And if the virus continues to percolate more so there than in Canada, questions around cross-border travel will persist, including the potential for requiring vaccine passports. Overall, this country may be in a better position to manage the virus.
We'll probably be somewhere between control and elimination going forward. This is not over by a long shot. Crisis phase is.
I didn't close my eyes, but I'm looking at my head jerk around eyes closed. So in these radio dramas, sometimes there's live audiences or whatever, and I point out that they're coughing in the background, so the mic might not pick it up. But the recording did pick up someone in the audience coughing. Or they're talking about corona, getting colds or whatever, which is a coronavirus. It's the same virus. It's not going to get better. Yeah, I mean, the virus will get worse and worse. It's never going back to the way it was.
Vaccine appointments. Rahana Durrani had every device in use, hoping to get her cousin a slot through the provincial booking system.
So I got up early and was able to get online,
yes,
but unfortunately, I've been getting kicked out of multiple systems. I'm on my laptop right now, and I've been waiting for over an hour and a half.
Her frustration compounded even during our short conversation.
I'm kind of in the system, but every time I try to choose a time, I receive an error.
Still, others had quick success.
I got there around 10 minutes before the actual eligibility opens up. And there was a line of 100,000 persons in front of me, and the expected time was 8:24. It was exactly around that time when I was able to get in, actually.
But for Mohammed Murad, success in booking means he will have to travel.
Because everything that's in my region has been booked, unless I have to wait until the end of the month. So I was able to find something in Mississauga. I live in Niagara Falls.
For the next 2 weeks, 50% of Ontario's vaccine supply will be allocated towards hotspot regions, a good step to get transmission under control. The demand high online and in person.
You know, in an ideal world,
we wouldn't have to be going through these pains in terms of how do you get your vaccine. But it's wonderful to see that people want it and that there's demand. And with more supply on the way, those on the front line say they have reason to be hopeful about the future of the rollout.
As we get more and more vaccines into the country, not only can we expand the breadth of the rollout, but we can also speed up the timing for which people can get their second doses.
And it is so odd to think about booking a second dose when so many people are still trying to secure their first. And that is why pop-up clinics like the one you see behind me, they are still going to be happening in hotspot zones. So tomorrow, right here, people who live in the postal code M1B, they can come here for their shot at a COVID-19 vaccination. I'll send it back. Alan?
Thank you. Dr. Bonnie Henry says BC is on track to get many more vaccines in the coming month, and that should accelerate the mass vaccination program. Good news for BC. Richard Zussman reports.
Along the way, from the South Asian community to Metro Vancouver mayors, different groups, same message.
We need more people registered. So this is an overt appeal to all of you to use your voices.
More than 2 million people have signed up now to get the vaccine, but that's not enough. The reason the province's age-based vaccination system is getting a shot in the arm. Starting this week and every week into May, the province is set to get 276,000 doses of Pfizer. In June, that jumps to 328,000 doses a week.
In some ways, we've been building a spaceship as we've been flying it, and we're now entering into a new era, a new warp speed, if you will.
The province is predicting a huge jump in shots delivered per day. Over the last 3 weeks, it's been around 35 to 37,000 shots a day. The province has the capacity and now the supply to do almost double that.
We're in a new phase of our immunization campaign, that the number of people by age and the rapid
how powerfully you can use soundscapes to detect changes in the forest.
What they were hoping to see from the conservation zones was this complete orchestra of sound.
And second doses.
And with the new increased supply that we have, we are looking at the potential of decreasing the interval to less than 16 weeks for most people.
A glitch has been detected in the province's online vaccination registration system. Some people who received AstraZeneca are now being told to get a first dose of Pfizer, something Dr. Bonnie Henry is advising people not to do.
Recognize that that's a glitch and they're going to be fixing it. So there's not, we don't believe there's a risk of people being missed. It's the other way around.
It's been incredibly confusing, and that's just a difficult situation for everyone right now when we need all hands on deck.
Glitches aside, the vaccination rollout is going faster than what people expected. The hope now from Dr. Bonnie Henry that everyone that wants a first shot will get it by mid-June. Richard Zussman, Global News, Victoria.
That light at the end of the tunnel seems so close, but so far. May long weekend, I fear, could be a lot different than Canada Day. I think there's going to be a big difference. May long weekend, I don't think is going to go well for anybody. Hopefully things turn around before that. I don't want to be pessimistic, but let's hope so. I'm Shane Hewitt. It's The Shift coming up next, in case you missed it, and Ryan O'Donnell.
This is bonkers. This has been half hour of bonkers.
The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour brings you an hour of comprehensive news and information from both China and from logging to farming to available on Stack TV.
Friday. These radio dramas, a feature of the Challenge of the Yukon Incorporated,
are created and produced by George W. Trendle, directed by Fred Flowerday, and edited by Fran Stryker. The part of Sergeant Preston is played by Paul Sutton. They are brought to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at the same time by Quaker Puffed Wheat and Quaker Puffed Rice, the breakfast cereals.
Start
A breath of fresh air.
when you're home.
This is very, very
Distribution of the BBC World Service in the U.S. is supported by Indeed with Instant Match, delivering to businesses a list of candidates whose resumes on Indeed match the job description. Learn more
at Remax West has always had the total service guarantee in writing. He still does. He'll buy your home if he can't sell it, but the homes are selling. They're selling like hotcakes. So what Frank really wants you to understand is when you go with Frank Leo's team at Remax, you are going to get every dime that the most precious asset in your life. Alan was tired of living in the city. He wanted to move up north. He could have more space to work.
So long. This is ABC, the American Broadcasting Company.
I thought it was mutual.
You're listening to Chin Radio AM 1540, the voice of multicultural Toronto, bringing you the latest updates on COVID-19. Stay informed, stay safe, and stay tuned to Chin Radio AM 1540.
We look at the impact on India's middle class. Could it force millions into poverty and slow down growth for a generation in one of the world's largest economies? That's all coming up after the very latest BBC headlines.
With a pair of white gold Tears of Joy earrings from Spence.
Are combing through the wreckage of metro carriages after a railway overpass collapsed onto a busy road. At least 20 people have died, including some children, and almost 50 have been taken to hospital. The foreign ministers from the G7 group of industrialised nations are starting direct talks in London, their first for 2 years. Discussions will focus on how the leading open democratic nations can draw together to counter the growing influence of autocratic governments. The official number of coronavirus cases in India has now topped 20 million. There's been no let-up in the rate of infections, with more than 300,000 positive tests a day. There are still reports of oxygen shortages in the capital, Delhi, and elsewhere in the country. The Indian Premier League, the world's richest cricket tournament, has been suspended after some players tested positive for coronavirus. An Indian Cricket Board official said no date has yet been fixed for a resumption of matches. The military authorities in Myanmar have charged a Japanese journalist with disseminating fake news. Yuki Kitazumi was taken from his home in Yangon by the security forces last month. He'd been covering the anti-coup protests in Myanmar for Japanese media outlets. 2 provinces in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo are to be placed under military and police control for the next month. The move comes in the wake of a surge of attacks by militias and continuing intercommunal violence in North Kivu and Ituri provinces near Congo's border with Uganda. And reports from Iran say that a senior member of staff at the Swiss embassy in Tehran has died after falling from the high-rise building where she lived. An emergency services spokesman said that she was the first secretary at the embassy. And that's the latest BBC World News.
What about the person that got shot in front of the CIA building?
Hello and welcome to Business Daily from the BBC World Service.
I don't know.
In case you missed it on the radio, here's
Darth Vader.
Donald.
May the 4th. I like that one. And also with you. I like that one a lot. Yes, we're going to talk about a pretty important story, but first, here's a headline for you. Actually, you know what? Just listen to this.
All right, birthday candles versus new tires. Here they come off turn 4 for the win. For the first time this year, Kyle Busch goes to victory lane. He wins the Bushy McBush Race 400. Wow! Happy birthday, Kyle. Great job.
Yes. Kyle Busch won the NASCAR Bushy McBush Race 400 on his birthday in Kansas.
That's a thing?
Yes. So the name of the race was announced as the Busch name because it's Anheuser-Busch. The company announced that fans would have the opportunity to choose another name for the race through a contest on the website. You had to pay $1, which went to the nonprofit charity called Charity Farm Rescue. And the internet decided that, yes, this NASCAR race, this big professional and important NASCAR race would in fact be called the Bushy McBush Race 400. And the man who won the Bushy McBush race is named Kyle Busch. It's fixed.
Didn't you have Bushy McBush face?
Well, there's Bodie McBoat face.
But I swear that in your notes today, you do. You have Bushy McBush face.
Well, I mean, he technically has a Bush face because he is Kyle Busch, and Kyle Busch has a face. It's just a ridiculous coincidence. I don't know what you call that. But regardless, that is a headline I loved. I love it so much. It's so stupid, and it's so crazy, the fact that it actually happened. Just a quick little thing to hopefully start your day off with a little bit of a smile before you get to hear me rant a little bit. Not about something nerdy, not about something you're going to poke fun at, something you're probably going to relate